So you've had the epiphany, I've helped the penny drop, and you realize that in 20 years' time, the difference between being a millionaire or still living paycheck to paycheck is just investing relatively small amounts of money today and letting them grow over time through compound interest. But you don't know what to do. So you come to me and say, SJJ, tell me what to do. Just give me the answer. But I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not allowed to give you financial advice. Otherwise, you could come back and blame me for it. So listen to Warren Buffett. Do what he says. He's the best fund manager in America. Let him advise you. He says just invest in the S&P 500, sit back and relax. You don't need to know what you're doing. The S&P 500 is an index that somebody else compiles of the top performing 500 companies in America. So just invest in that. Over the last 10 years, the S&P 500 has delivered annual returns of an average of 14.8%. Now that's so large, so high, that some people are shocked when you tell them that. They think that's like crazy levels. But that's the return of the last 10 years. Look it up. Some years it's been more, some years it's been down, but on average, it's been a great bull run. 14.8%. That's better than you'll get in any bank. And if you've not been invested, you've been missing out. So put your money in that if you don't know what else to do, because putting it in other things, you're liable to make mistakes. But this is the foolproof way. In other things, without any information, without any time and effort to look into and research companies, you are liable to make errors, to be susceptible to scams and mistakes. So take Warren Buffett's advice, sit back, relax, invest in the S&P 500. So get a pen and paper, pause the video, and I'll tell you exactly how to do it in a minute. So just before we do, some people will say, look, you should buy a whole world stock market fund. That's the general advice that people give. Buy the whole market, a whole world fund, because America might underperform China, or Euro stocks might perform better than American stocks. And you might be right. All these are complexities, though, that make the issue harder than it has to be. So Warren Buffett says, just put your money in the top 500 American companies. They're the best companies in the world. Invest in one fund. And in fact, it's the advice that he gives to this day in his will to his widow, to put 90% of his wealth when he dies into an S&P 500 fund. So what would happen if you did that? Well, let's say that you started putting £1,000 per month in. And look, I'll be real with you, that if we extend the S&P 500 out over 25 years to encompass the black swan events of the 2008 financial collapse and the dot-com bubble bursting, disasters for finance, then on average the S&P 500 has returned 10% annually, which still is a great return. Better than you'll get in any bank account. But it does go down to 10%. So let's imagine that those black swan events are coming again in the future. But 10%, £1,000 a month in there, calculate that with compound interest, you're going to have £418,000 in 15 years that you otherwise would not have had. But because compound interest works like a snowball over time that grows rapidly towards the end, then most of these gains, if you look here, more than half the gains occur in the last 5 years out of the 15. So let's see what happens if we look to a 20-year time horizon instead of 15. Well, again, we end up on over $750,000 here. And nearly half the gains again are in just the last 5 years. Let's imagine that we manage to get over the coming 10 years the return that the S&P 500 has delivered over the previous 10, close to 15%. Well, in that case, after 20 years, you will be sat on £1.5 million from just £1,000 a month, achieved by delivering some hamburgers like SJJ does on a weekend, or delivering some Amazon packages for a couple of hours on an evening a couple of times a week. 1.5 million in 20 years. Just through the passive investing, where you don't have to know what you're doing, you let somebody else do the hard work for you of putting it into the S&P 500. And I don't think there's any reason why the next 10 years can't give us the same return or better than the last 10 years of 14.8%, because we're at the early stages of AI that's just been invented, which promises to drive efficiencies in companies, increase their margins on their products, which will increase revenue and profit. So there's every reason to believe that we're in my opinion, a generational bull run that will outperform the last 10 years due to AI. At the very least, as Zoomers, we should demand to get returns for the next decade that the millennials had in the previous decade. I think that's a reasonable demand. So just sit back, relax. So how do you do this then? How do you go about doing it? Well, first of all, the little bit of agency that you need in your personal circumstances, wherever you live, if you don't live in the UK, is to research the best tax advantaged account for you in your country. In the UK, I can tell you it's a stocks and shares ISA, and the best product, in my opinion, is Trading 212. Now, I'm not sponsored by them. I don't have a link to give you or anything. I just think it's the best product. It's zero commission investing, no account fees. So, great app. You can just buy on your phone. For you, if you live in a different country, go to ChatGPT and ask it which is the best account for you. If you don't have any tax-free wrappers like this, then go and open a Robinhood account. They offer zero commission investing, no account fees. That would be my, non-financial advice. So then, what do? Here's where your pen and paper come in. In the UK, you can just buy this one. Vanguard S&P 500 VUAG. Just buy that one. That's Warren Buffett's advice. Buy the S&P 500, just buy that. VUAG. If you're in America, the equivalent one is VOO. VOO. Just buy that one. These are low-cost S&P 500 funds. So all you don't have to buy anything else, just this. Buy £1,000 every month. Yes, please. Thank you very much. There you go. It's as simple as that. You buy one thing, and by buying that one thing, it shows you here, fund allocation. You are buying a small piece of each of these companies. A small piece in proportion to their market cap. So by buying that one thing, you own a little bit of every one of these companies, and you will get the return of each of these companies in proportion to their market cap in the ETF. It's that simple. And you'll get the return of the S&P 500 while knowing nothing. But what if you say, SJJ, but I want a moonshot as well? Well, I can't give you this advice to do it, but let's say you did, and after doing your own due diligence, you thought about it, and you say, oh, I want to have a moonshot, I want to take a risk, and maybe get something that would 10x alongside my passive invested S&P 500 fund. Well then, feel free to go ahead, and why don't you take 10% of what you'd put in your S&P 500 fund and put it in something that might 10x, like crypto. Put it in Go and buy 75% Ethereum and 25% Bitcoin and see what happens. Knowing that it's a gamble, go to somewhere like Kraken or Coinbase or in America Robinhood or eToro or in the UK Bitstamp and just buy some crypto every month. 10%. You know, if you're investing £1,000 a month in the S&P 500, well, put 900 in the S&P 500 and put 100 in crypto. And then you've got safe, steady, reliable, sensible investing alongside a moonshot. I can't tell you that that's what you should be doing. You have to make all these decisions for you. But it couldn't be simpler than buying one fund or, like I say, buying that plus a moonshot. That's not like a bad idea. Sorry, the alarm's going off on my phone. So I think that's it. Here's Warren Buffett before we end out on diversification. Why? Look, when you get the bug, later when you get the bug and you start researching stocks, you might want you might learn more, and you can then get better returns on the stock market. And that's why he says, really, diversification is for fools, but until you've learnt it, you are the fool. And he doesn't mean that in a derogatory way. It means you can get the good returns as a fool with diversification. But once you've figured it all out, there's better returns to be had. And here he is explaining.
We think diversification is, as practice generally, makes very little sense for anyone that knows what they're doing. Diversification is a protection against ignorance. I mean, if you want to make sure that nothing bad happens to you relative to the market, you own everything. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's a perfectly sound approach for somebody who does not feel they know how to analyze businesses. If you know how to analyze businesses and value businesses, it's crazy to own 50 stocks or 40 stocks or 30 stocks probably, because there aren't that many wonderful businesses that are understandable to a single human being in all likelihood. And to have some super wonderful business and then put money in number 30 or 35 on your list of attractiveness and forego putting more money into number 1 just strikes Charlie and me as madness.
So when you've figured it out and you know more about what you're doing, you'll be able to find better returns in the stock market, perhaps by investing in companies that individually might do better, but then you're taking on that due diligence that is required of you to research and make the correct pick and make the correct picks. And fantastic returns are open to you in the stock market. But until then, Warren Buffett's advice is invest in the top 500 companies in America. VUAG, VU, or VU. And then alongside that, maybe do a moonshot. Take a moonshot on something that's a gamble, something that could go to 0 or 100 times its value, and you don't know. And that might keep you excited looking at it. Never invest anything that you can't afford to lose. Your capital is at risk. Okay, your capital is at risk. I'm not a financial advisor. This wasn't financial advice. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.